Hello there, my pretties. Are you looking for a way to banish your writer fear? Well, sit with me for a spell and we'll brew up a plan to vanquish that fear monster for good. Greetings, everyone. It's me, Scarlett Kol, young adult author, YouTuber, and storyteller. And today I'm also a witch. But am I a good witch or a bad witch? I guess I'll never tell. With Halloween just around the corner, I figured, hey, I might as well dress up and address something that a lot of authors face, and that is writer fear. I wanted to be something a little bit more scary, so originally I'd planned to be a vampire, but talking with those teeth made it a little hard to understand me. So hopefully the witch costume will be a little bit easier on the ears. But before we jump into that, I would like to say thank you to any of my subscribers who have come back to watch my channel week after week. And if you are brand new here, thank you so much for joining us. And if you do want to hear more content from me, make sure you're hitting the subscription bar and the notification bell to let you know every time I put up a new video. So what do I mean by writer fear? I'm talking about the fear that you have as an author, as a writer, as you're working on your manuscripts, as you're marketing, anything that you're doing. It can come completely out of nowhere. It can build up over time. Some of it can be deeply entrenched with anxiety and depression, unfortunately. So some of those things I'm really not going to address, but hopefully some of these tips will still be able to help you out and alleviate that a little bit. I don't know about you guys. When I'm writing along, things are going really, really well. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to get this writer fear just jump out at me. And it actually kind of slips in a little bit. And it's going to sit there and be like, hey, sup? What you working on? Oh, you're writing a book. That's great. You know nobody's going to read that, right? And what you're writing is total garbage. And your characters are like cardboard. And your plot's boring. And that thing you're doing right there, that's not going to work. You're going to have to fix all the stuff that came before it. But it doesn't really matter because when you release it, no one's going to read it because you don't write fast enough. So there's going to be so many other books out there faster than yours, so many others that no one's going to read it anyway. And even if they did, you'd probably just get bad reviews because you're a bad writer, because your plot sucks and your characters suck. And why are you doing this? Why don't you just take up finger painting? But I'm just going to sit here and let you do it. Now, I don't know if your fear sounds like that, or maybe they have a really cool accent or something, but that's basically the one that runs through my head. Depending on what I'm working on and what stage I am on the project, it can be various different things. A lot of times when it does sneak in, I find is when I'm editing. The closer that a book is to being released into the world, I find I get that fear a lot because I'm just worried about how people are going to react to the story, whether they're going to like it, all that sort of thing. However, this also slows me down significantly. And if you've ever dealt with writer fear in any sort of way, you're going to understand how much that can definitely hold you back. So even though there's no silver bullet to kill that fear that shows up once in a blue moon, there are definitely some tactics that you can use to alleviate some of that fear or at least get you moving forward on your project again. So I'm going to try and go through a bunch of these really, really quickly because I'm sure you want to get back to your tricks and treats. So here goes. Number one is get inspired. There's a kind of two ways you can do this, so I'll go through both of them. But the first one is to find authors or TV shows kind of in your genre or that inspire you. Authors that write really well that you would really like to be like or emulate within your writing, or TV shows that had inspired you to write the story that you're writing or within your particular genre and keep you wanting to write these types of stories. By inspiring yourself either in writing, in your genre, or both, this can help you move a little bit forward because you want to, get your book out and to go down that path as those other authors and to share your story with other people. Being able to see things in the worlds that you're creating, whether it be romance or science fiction or horror or whatever, can really ignite that fire of inspiration to get things moving forward. The other way to inspire yourself is to read or watch something absolutely terrible, particularly in your genre. One of the things that I actually find is even more inspiring for myself is if I watch a show that I don't particularly like that is set or similar to what I'm writing, because it kind of gives me that inspiration of, hey, you know what? The plot that I'm working on and that I've been telling myself is awful for like 4 days really isn't that bad. I should just go back there and try to make it the best that it can be because this show ended up on Netflix and I hate it. and it's awful. So this can be a reverse way to inspire you. Sometimes I get caught up a little bit when I'm reading authors that I really love, and I get even more frustrated. It works for some people, and it also works sometimes depending on where I am in fear and all that sort of stuff. I can sometimes read specific authors and they're going to push me forward, but sometimes I'll read them and I'll be like, I will never be as good as they are. So at that point, I usually do the opposite, and I will read or watch something that is something I absolutely hate, and that way I can be inspired to try and be better than whatever it is that I'm disliking out there. The second thing you can do to kick fear's butt a little bit is to tell a friend, particularly a writer friend or artistic friend of some sort. Why would you want to do that? Because the majority of people that are writers or authors or anything where you are taking something and basically putting your heart into it and then putting it out for public consumption have fear in some sort of way. So being able to tell somebody about how you're feeling, first off, they can probably commiserate with you, and that typically will make you feel better that you're not alone. This video, of course, will tell you you are not alone. The majority of people who are probably going to watch this, first off, A, probably looked for it because they're dealing with writer fear, or two, have dealt with it sometime before or will deal with it in the future. It happens so often that if by telling somebody, it might give you this sort of camaraderie and being able to understand that you are not alone and that you are not the only one who is struggling with this sort of thing. Also, they might be able to talk you through it or kind of give you that little bit of inspiration and pep talk that you needed on a more personal level than trying to deal with it on your own. Number 3 is to work on your blurb, synopsis, or any type of extra writing that's going to be involved for this project, or if it's part of a series or novella or whatever that you're going to do relating to this project, but not necessarily the part where you are drawing the fear from. So why are we doing that? Basically, it's to, first off, inspire you why you wanted to write the story in the first place. When you are writing a blurb or a query, you are basically like condensing down the story into the most important aspects. And those are the aspects of the reason why you probably wanted to write this in the first place. A lot of times when you break that stuff down, you are going to find the love for that story again. So even though you're working on a chapter or a section or character that is particularly troublesome, by igniting that fire again as to why you wanted to write the story and why it was important to you in the first place can definitely help you move forward through your fear. If you aren't going to be writing a blurb or query or just aren't ready to do that, the other thing you can do to have the same sort of effect is to tell a friend. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a writer friend or whatever, or you can even just do this to yourself. Sit down in a room or call somebody up on the phone and tell them the story out of your own mouth. And then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. You're not worried about style or structure or character voice, or if you've got anything perfect within a scene. You're basically just trying to get out the major plot points and figure out what it is that you loved about this story. Oftentimes when I've done this, or I've been really frustrated with a project and then I've gone out to see a friend for coffee and they've asked what I've been working on, I'll start going through a little bit of my story. It usually doesn't take me very long, and all of a sudden I want to be writing that story again, even if I haven't been for a while. It may not last very long and you may have to do this several times, but it can definitely be useful in trying to get you back into that story and into the reasons you really, really loved it. Plus, if you are working on the blurb or query, you already have a draft of that done. So once you have finished your book and you need to go back and write your blurb, query, or synopsis, you already have a rough draft on your computer ready to go. The next thing is to take a break, but only a short break. I was really reluctant to even include this in the video because breaks are very sketchy kind of things. When you are taking a short break just to give yourself some mental time and to process things and to come back to your work refreshed, that's fantastic. One of the problems that I have, and I'm sure a lot of people out there have, is if you start on a break and you're frustrated about something or you're scared about something, then the break just keeps going. And the longer the break is, the harder it is to get back into that project. So taking a break can be great for your mental health and just getting that breather that you need from the project to try and like re-energize yourself. But really, really, really try hard not to make that break extended, because the longer you take of a break, the harder it is going to be getting back into that project. Granted, when you are a writer, there are times where you do need to take an extended break. Sometimes you have burnout, sometimes you have other issues that you need to deal with, and you do need to take an extended break. However, if you are taking a break just because you're scared and it's going into a long period of time, then this is going to be detrimental to your project as opposed to helping you out. It's actually probably going to put you in a worse position, because you are going to go back to that fear and not really know what you're doing in the project anymore, feel kind of floundering and frustrated, and it's going to add on top of that fear. My next suggestion, especially if you were dealing with kind of overwhelming fear, or it's been going on for a prolonged period of time, or specific with this project, one of the things you probably should do is sit back and figure out where the fear is coming from. Sometimes it's just a generalized fear. It's just general fear of success, or people are actually going to read this, or my mom is going to call me when she reads this kissing scene. Oh my God, I can't deal with that. But sometimes the fear is coming from a chapter that just isn't working, and you know in your gut that the plot isn't working, but you just don't know how to fix it. And this can manifest itself in fear and telling yourself you're not good enough, and telling yourself that nobody's going to want to read this, or it's not going to be very good when you're done, because you don't honestly believe that it's good enough, because you know there's a problem, you can sense it, you can feel it, you just don't know how to solve it yet. So if you can sit back and figure out where the fear is coming from, and it is something specific to the story, or like isolated to a specific character or a plot line or whatever, then try to find solutions to solve that particular problem. Once you solve the problem, I can pretty much guarantee you that that fear is just going to flit away, because you have solved the underlying problem that has kind of been hidden from you a little bit. This takes a little bit of like self-awareness and sitting back and really analyzing yourself and your methods and what makes sense to you. But it can definitely be worth it in the end if you can solve that problem and move forward. My next suggestion is to just get it all out there. So one of the things that they suggest when you are dealing with overwhelm just in your daily life or trying to deal with stress is to try to get those things off your brain. If you are worried about all of the things you need to do, you should create a to-do list, because it allows your brain to dump all of that information into one place, and you can feel a lot more control of it. So one of the things that's very helpful, and I have done several times in the past, is to sit down and write down what you're scared about. What are you worried about? What are your fears that are plaguing you right now? And by able to put them on paper, first off, they kind of come out of your head and you kind of verbalize them to yourself. And some of them are probably pretty ridiculous, so those kind of go off the list right away. And secondly, all the stuff that's left on the list, you can go through them line by line and figure out where these things are coming from. Are they based in reality? Does that even make sense? Or are you just building these things up in your head? If they're ridiculous, cross them off the list. If it's something that is a legitimate issue, how are you going to deal with it? Yes, it's possible that people are not going to like this book, or this book is totally different than something else, and this is where this fear is coming from. What are the different steps that you can take to make that easier, to make that launch better, to deal with those things? So sit down, deal with them. Even if it's not actually doing those things, put out an action plan of, I'm going to deal with this unusual book by these launch steps. I'm going to deal with the fact that I'm not particularly fond of this character because of this. I'm not going to worry about whether or not I get reviews on this book, but I'm going to do these steps to try and see if I can get people to review it. And if it doesn't happen, that's going to be okay. So those are definitely some steps that you can take to get those things off of your mind. So just taking that weight off of your shoulders, and then making concrete action plans as to what you're going to do about them. Once you have a plan in place as to how you're going to deal with something, it's a lot easier for your brain to move past them, because they've been dealt with and are off to the side, and you can move forward. My next one is another one of those precarious pieces of advice, because I don't necessarily use it on a regular basis, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest it either. So that is putting a reward system in place. Generally, when you're a writer, first off, if you are writing all the time, then, part of it has to be the reason that you're writing is intrinsic reward, right? Like, you want to write because you want to see your books in print. You want to tell your stories. You want to write. You want to be a writer, and that's why you're doing it. If this is your full-time job, then obviously maybe you're paying the bills for your family. But for a large chunk of people out there, they're just writing to write. And if they are, then that should be kind of reward in itself. I know it's not always easy, but at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy writing and you don't need the income for this, why are you doing it? So I don't necessarily see reward systems always working, especially if you do write very prolifically. Then you could also be rewarding yourself very, very often, which could get very expensive and cumbersome just to keep up with your rewards scheme. However, if you are dealing with fear and it is really paralyzing you and you are not being able to move forward with your project, then maybe it's time to bring in a small reward system for that particular project until you can get through it. It could be a physical thing. When I'm done this book, I am going to buy myself X. It could be an experience, whereas I really, really want to watch the new season of The Witcher or whatever show it is that you're interested in, and you can delay that. I'm not going to watch it until I'm finished this project. That could be a great reward system to get you through it and to push you through that fear. However, like I said, reward systems are kind of touch and go in the sense that they can really, really help in small situations such as working through that project. I know a lot of people who are doing it for NaNoWriMo, which is great, but for the long term, if you want to be a writer, you gotta want to write. And my final piece of advice is one you've probably heard in various different places. And if you haven't, fantastic, it's new to you. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it's something that I've actually done and it worked really well. This is to find a book in your genre by an author that you love, a book you particularly loved, and then go on Goodreads and read its reviews. So some of the bigger books obviously are going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reviews. Lots of them are going to be gushing about it, and obviously that's how that book got to be so popular and why you love it so much. However, I will guarantee you that there is at least one, probably several reviews that are 3 to 1 star and are not necessarily very positive about that book. By reading those reviews, it's not like you really want to wallow in their misery. Haha, somebody didn't like their book. The whole point is to see that things are very subjective. People love certain things and other people don't. I also suggest reading some of the positive reviews as well. If it's something in your genre, it's also really helpful because you kind of get to see what some people like and what some people don't. What are the things they raved about? Was it characters? Was it plot? Was it specific tropes within that genre that they were interested in? What made people fall in love with that book and what made people hate that book? First off, it makes you feel better because you can see that no matter how good your book is, when you finish this project, this could be the book that solves the problem for world peace. Does not matter. Someone's gonna hate it. It's just the way it goes. So being able to see that on a large scale for something that you are very passionate about is fantastic. It kind of gives you that full rounded picture as to why some people love certain things and why people don't. And the fact is that it's always going to happen, that you're going to have people on both sides. It's a little bit comforting when you get back into your project knowing that, you know what, someone out there is going to hate it and there's nothing I can do about that. Doesn't matter how good this book is, someone is going to hate it. And you know what? Someone out there is going to love it. Yes, this line may seem really, really cheesy. Someone is going to love that. Someone is going to hate it. This trope feels a little overdone. Someone is going to be looking for that. Someone is going to never want to read that trope again. So being able to see both sides of that is very, very reassuring for some people. And this can help them move past their own fear in their own writing by knowing and being able to see it, that it's going to be okay no matter how their project ends up. But I guess there is one other option, and that's to find a spell book, summon a demon to write the best book that there is, or put a spell on the entire world that they are going to love you and every single word you write. That might be a little bit more difficult, but if you can pull it off, you should definitely leave a comment below and call me up because I would totally be interested in learning that witchcraft. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully some of these tips will help you conquer some of your writer fears. I hope everybody has a very happy Halloween, and if you are looking forward to NaNoWriMo, which is starting this Sunday, November 1st, where you write 50,000 words in the month of November, I will be joining along with you and looking very forward to it. If you are not joining NaNoWriMo, I will still be having videos that might be a little bit more NaNoWriMo themed, but they will be accessible for everyone, so don't feel like you have to hide away just because you aren't participating. Thank you so much for joining me, and if you'd like to hear more content from me, make sure you're hitting that subscription bar and the notification bell below this video. And if you've been coming back week after week, thank you so much for being a part of this rebel family. So for me and my pet crow Malfoy, sleep tight, my pretties, and have a great Halloween.